Well, you know how much Chip Kelly likes D'Amico Ryans. He talks about his leadership, and that's important to him. And with Chip Kelly, it's often you kind of listen to what he says and take it with a grain of salt, and more importantly, pay attention to what he does. And the fact that you're right. I mean, on paper, you have three starting inside linebackers: D'Amico Ryans, Kiko Alonso, and Michael Kendricks, and logically, if you look at that three, who's the odd man out? And it would be, at least in Chip Kelly's world, it would be Michael Kendricks. I think a lot of NFL teams would look at that differently. I think they would, certainly look at him as more of an ascending player than D'Amico Ryans. But, we've seen Chip Kelly's willingness to move parts, and he would certainly be a logical guy that has some value that would enable him to get something back.
Yeah, that would be the question then. Do they look at Michael Kendricks as a chip still, which obviously that draft day trade is still going to be lingering for them? Is Michael Kendricks a guy they believe they can spin and move themselves up?
Well, I think they believe that, and I think they certainly can. I mean, I think, by and large, people look at players and assign them more value than perhaps NFL teams do as far as draft picks go, just because that's the nature of the league, and teams really, really value draft picks over players. So, you look at a Michael Kendricks, and people can talk about what the Eagles can get for him, and they certainly can get something for him. And if that spins off to something else, I mean, let's face it, until Sam Bradford gets a contract extension, there's no guarantee he's going to be the long-term answer in Philly. And the Marcus Mariota stuff still looms out there. So you have a dearth of inside linebackers. And don't forget, the Eagles also signed, Brad Jones, who's got starting experience with the Packers. So they already have depth at that position, and they have too many. So somebody's got to go. And logically, it's certainly not going to be Alonso. It's most likely not going to be Ryans, because he would have no value on the open market, whereas Kendricks obviously does.
Yeah, that's a good point you brought, too, as kind of a depth guy for them. And here's a situation where an Eagles team, fans were always saying they don't value linebacker. Is this showing that Chip Kelly does have value in the linebacker? They got a lot of money tied up between Graham, Barwin, and Ryans now, and then you would think that either Kendricks or Alonso is going to be due for a payday if they're both here.
Well, I think that's just shift really from the 4-3 mentality they had for many years to the 3-4, because if you're going to play the 3-4, your impact playmakers are generally going to be the linebackers. And you've seen that shift in the mentality with the Eagles since they've made that change, whereas generally when you play a 4-3 defense, it's going to be those pass-rushing defensive ends, those run stoppers, those under tackles, and the linebackers are kind of the afterthought. With the 3-4, it's the exact opposite, and you've seen that shift from Andy Reid to Chip Kelly, and that's just a sharp 180 in defensive philosophy.
John McMullen, the NFL editor, sportsnetwork.com, here on the Sports Bash 97.3. The Eagles went out and officially assigned Miles Austin. The team announced via Twitter he gets a one-year deal worth $2.3 million plus another $700,000 available incentives, John. Number one, how do you view Austin? I mean, he has obviously not been the same player that he was in 2009 and 10 in Dallas, but what do you make of the deal that he got? Does that suggest that the Eagles find him to be a player that can contribute?
Well, I think it's more anything, than not. It's an insurance policy, and it's a guy who's, had a lot of success in the league and a lot of production. He's also got the size Chip Kelly likes in receivers, and that, kind of transforms to the running game where guys who can block, and obviously Miles Austin can help in that aspect of it. But, I think it's a contract you can walk away from easily. So to me, it smacks of an insurance policy, and that's a position they're going to have to obviously address in the draft, because there's not much out there on the free agency market. It's pretty clear there's Greg Jennings, maybe a veteran receiver out there, Michael Crabtree, but the fact that they brought in Miles Austin kind of says that's the guy they wanted, and that's the guy they think that's the best option. But if you're expecting the old Miles Austin who's making Pro Bowls in Dallas, you're not going to see that. He's clearly lost a step He's not that type of player anymore, and other people are going to have to step up, and that starts with Jordan Matthews, obviously, and Josh Huff, and I think you'll see one or possibly two receivers coming in the draft, and it's, I think if they have to count on Miles Austin to catch 60, 70 balls, the Eagles are probably in trouble.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Where do you look at Jordan Matthews moving forward, John? What is some talk around the league about him? He played in the slot very well. Is he an outside guy, or do you think he is best suited on that inside?
Well, I think his size says he's best suited for the outside, but, he's not the quickest guy in the world. He's going to have trouble with press coverage at times with top-tier cornerbacks, but, everybody does. I don't think you automatically rule him out from that because, somebody can't get open against Darrelle Revis. That's fine because there aren't too many Darrelle Revises in the world. So I think just by the nature of what the Eagles have on the roster, he's going to have to play on the outside a little bit more. And Chip Kelly's philosophy is different than a lot of people in the NFL because most teams want those smaller guys in the slot who really run great routes. You think about, Wes Welker, you think about Julian Edelman, players like that. That's the typical slot receiver in the NFL. It's usually not a 6'3" guy with the size and the ball skills of a Matthews. Usually you want those guys outside the numbers. But, Chip Kelly's not conventional. So if he feels he can help most inside the slot, he'll keep him there. But if you keep him there, you have to get somebody who can play outside the numbers. And right now I don't see that on their roster.
John, I want to look at some of the moves over the weekend, or some of the decisions the NFL has made over the weekend. There was a lot of talk about the fines and stuff handed out to the Falcons, number one. They get fined $350,000, and they lose a fifth-round draft choice for piping in crowd noise. What do you make of that decision? I kind of think that's a little harsh. I mean, the team, I can understand if the team was winning, and that proved to be a big factor, but for them to lose a fifth-round draft choice for a team that won 3 games at home, I kind of find that to be a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah, I think it was an overreach completely. I mean, I covered the Vikings for years in the Metrodome, and they used to pipe in crowd noise all the time. I think this is a direct result of what happened last year, and I think, it's Roger Goodell trying to be tough to prove he can be tough. And I don't think it was fair to the Falcons. And the bottom line with the NFL is I think some of these things, some of these issues, don't warrant congressional hearing, so to speak. I mean, they're not that big of a deal. This could have been solved with a phone call and said, hey, stop doing that. And then if the Falcons continue to do it, okay, maybe you address it with a fine. But, to take away a draft choice, even a lower round pick like they did, that's too much. And to suspend, a guy 4, weeks from the competition committee or whatever they're going to do, that was also an overreach with Rich McKay. So I think it comes down to the fact that, he took so much shrapnel with some of the personal conduct issues last year. I think Roger Goodell's trying to prove he can be tough, and I think it was an overreach.
How about the texting thing? I mean, first off, they even said that he wasn't saying – it's not like he was texting, hey, I know what play they're running. I mean, he's just texting down to the field, I guess, disapproval of some of the things going on. Is he not allowed to walk into – I mean, Jerry Jones is down on the field. I mean, is he allowed to verbally say something, but he can't text? I mean, to me, the Browns thing is absolutely preposterous.
Yeah, it is. And I said, I'm on in Cleveland all the time. I said, if you really want to punish the Browns, make Ray Farmer be their general manager if you look at the draft he had last year. So, yeah, I mean, it's the same type of thing. You're right. I mean, people can walk on the field. They can say things, but they can't text. It's really, more of a semantics thing than anything else. And the fact that, it's a general manager who doesn't have a lot of experience. And, again, he made a mistake. And I'm not even convinced if you listen to Ray Farmer talk that he knew he couldn't do that. So it's another situation where you probably should hand out a warning first and foremost, and if things continue from there, okay, then amp up the punishment. But, it's where we are in the NFL, and they want to prove they're going to be harsh on conduct that is not allowed, and that's unfortunately the Browns and Falcons made mistakes in a new era.
John, somebody wrote the other day that the extra point is obviously broken. I don't recall ever turning on a game so that I can watch an extra point. Now, the NFL might say exactly, but is it really that big of a problem that they are going through the measures that they are to try to figure out a way to change it? Does it really need to be touched? Can't they just keep it the way that it is? I mean, it doesn't seem that they're losing viewers over this.
No, I'm with you. I mean, I'm a traditionalist by and large, and the game's not broke. You look at the popularity of the game, pretty clearly people are happy with it. There's been no evidence that anyone has an issue with it, save for some of the people. And, you know, a large part of it speaks to just how good not only the kickers have gotten, but also the long snappers and the holders. And, you know, while most extra points are just a ho-hum, a fait accompli, you know, you kind of go on and expect it. You know, tell Tony Romo it doesn't matter. You know, when it does happen and when an extra point gets blocked or somebody fumbles the snap or what have you, it is a shocking thing, and it does change the game. And to turn it into a competitive football play, and that's the term they've been using. I mean, then you enter into the law of unintended consequences, I always say, because this league is always talking about player safety, and if you move up the extra point to, say, the 1 yard line to encourage more 2-point plays, which they may do, all of a sudden you have a whole nother group of plays where guys, so you have that aspect of it. If you move it back to the 15-yard line, as long as these kickers are so good, they're going to make that too. So I think it's something that isn't broken, doesn't need to be fixed. But, you know, my best guess is in May they're going to change it.
Yeah, I don't know why they're putting so much effort into this. You know, obviously, if they want to change the way television covers it, maybe, you know, kick it right away. They take that commercial, then they kick it, then they take another commercial. I don't have a problem with them looking into that, but I don't think they really need to change the way the whole thing has gone down here. And obviously, they are determined to do so. John, the offseason, this is about the time where, you know, a lot of the big free agents have kind of gone. I want to look at the NFC East real quick because the Eagles have made one of the busier teams. They did not make the playoffs. They fell short of Dallas. Has Philadelphia, to this point, done enough to take over Dallas as the best team in the East? Or do you think Dallas, still as constructed before the draft, is the better team?
Well, you know, the Eagles made so many, you know, big moves. It's hard to assume the Eagles have done enough to be better than Dallas, simply because you don't know how any of this is going to work out. I mean, and you start at the most important position in the game. I mean, that is a drastic change to go from Nick Foles to Sam Bradford. And the bottom line is, we can talk about it today all we want. We have no idea if it's going to be Sam Bradford. There's still a chance that they go all in to try to get Marcus Mariota. And who knows, in that instance, maybe Mark Sanchez ends up being the starter. There's so many moving parts, and they've made so many drastic changes in what is, to me, the ultimate league that isn't a plug-and-play league. In other words, you know, you can sign big name in baseball. Obviously, if you get a LeBron James in basketball, you're going to be good. It doesn't matter what uniform he's in. If you change teams, he could go from Cleveland to Philadelphia, and the Sixers have one of the worst teams in basketball. They'd have one of the best teams in basketball, because that's what the NBA is. NFL is not like that. So until we actually see the finished product, I can't say the Eagles have done enough, despite all those flashy moves. And Dallas, on the other hand, is, you know, by and large, with the exception of losing DeMarco Murray, obviously, to the Eagles, you know, they haven't done a lot of sexy moves in free agency, with the possible exception of Greg Hardy, who could be a difference maker, but, you know, he's probably going to be suspended for a significant period of time. They brought in, you know, Darren McFadden, who's certainly not going to be DeMarco Murray, Jasper Brinkley, who's a 2-down linebacker. So it's not like the Cowboys have done a lot. but they're going to be the far more consistent team, and generally consistency from year to year is a prudent way to go in the NFL.
Yeah, what about the other two teams, the Giants and the Redskins? It seems like they've almost been silent this offseason. What is the take on what those two teams have kind of been doing?
Well, yeah, the Giants, it's surprising because obviously New York, number one media market in this country, but they always fly under the radar. They haven't done much. I mean, they brought in Shane Breen, Dwayne Harris, who's a good kick returner, a couple of defensive linemen, and Kendrick Ellis and George Selby. But, again, it's not going to wow you. To me, I think we always talk about those two Super Bowl titles, and, you should, deservedly so. Tom Coughlin has done a great job over the long haul with the Giants. But the bottom line to me is that, that's a team that has made the playoffs just once over the past 6 years. So I'm not sure the Giants have done enough to get back in the talk and ready to compete. If you ask me, though, in free agency, who's done the best job, I would say it's the Redskins because they've really improved their defensive line by getting Terrence Knighton and also Stephen Pyatt from the Bears. They got a pretty good cornerback in Chris Culver. But, with Washington, until they figure out RG3 and Jake Gruden and those two can coexist, you're not going to say they're a contender either. So to me, the Cowboys and Eagles remain at the top of the division, but the Eagles are a big wild card because they've made so many drastic changes.
Last one for you, John. There was a report the other day, or a suggestion the other day, that the Browns are still in search of a quarterback. I guess that means they're not buying into Johnny Manziel. So two of the names mentioned were Marcus Mariota and Sam Bradford. Are the Browns a team that you think could still be very active in trying to get a quarterback before the draft?
Well, they can because they have the 2 first-round picks, obviously, and that's why, reportedly they're willing to give up one for Sam Bradford, which is, astonishing to me. But that's Ray Farmer. And, what a lot of people don't talk about is the fact that Farmer had such a disastrous first draft, not only with Manziel, but also you remember he traded down and picked Justin Gilbert with the 8th overall pick. He barely got on the field. So this is a guy who can't afford a big mistake, or he's probably looking for a new job. So I think a lot of the talk about them moving up to get Marcus Mariota a year after picking Johnny Manziel, I don't know how you can do that as a general manager and keep your job. So I think a lot of that part of it is a little bit overblown.
All right, so much will take place between now and then. The pro days are going on right now, Jameis Winston. And, last year we saw the pro days. Manziel performed well. Bridgewater did not. And I think we know how those things are going. Winston today, and then obviously down the road, we already saw Mariota. So we'll see what changes between now and the draft. We're sure we will hear plenty more news and notes on the NFL. John McMullen over at sportsnetwork.com has plenty more, including some takeaways on the pro days. John, it's always a pleasure, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike.